but failure to obey the rules that enforce separation from ordinary life means ejection into a world for which they are unprepared.
It was a known thing ever since you were a child that if you ever left, that you'd go to hell, you'd burn in hell forever, and that you'd never be able to speak to any of your family or anyone that you'd ever known for your childhood in the Brethren ever again. That you'd just be ignored and, you know, like you didn't exist. I mean, I did know that, but I didn't actually think I'd feel the way that I did after I left, how much it would hurt. Let's put back in the pan.
Laura Knight lost her family when she finally left the Brethren, but she's making a new one.
There we go.
After 5 years outside, she's had 2 children by different fathers.
There we go. I've made 2 mistakes, but they're the best mistakes I've ever made. You know, I've had 2 bad relationships, but I've got 2 beautiful things from them, and I don't regret a day of it because they are everything to me. Come on then. All the love that I can't give to my family is now ploughed into them children, and they won't ever go without love. Recently I met Trevor. He's asked me to be his wife, which I'm really happy about. He's 18. He's a toy boy. He's the best thing that's happened to me since I left the Brethren, except my children. Top of the big hill over there.
Laura left one night with the help of a friend. She got a job in a factory 100 miles away from her home in Portsmouth. But her parents traced her.
2 bottle and 2 dried, please. Yeah. They spent ages talking to me and saying that if I didn't go back, they'd never be able to speak to me again, that I'd be condemned forever, and I was doing something really evil, all the things they normally say to try and make you go back. And I just said no. I had to be really strong, and it was really hard. And after they went, I was able to cry, but at the time I had to be really strong, because if they'd seen me weak, they would have been able to play on that and take me home. I think I got really that lonely that I started missing my family, and then the doubts started to creep in. Well, what if they're right? What if I do end up going to hell? I don't want to burn forever in hell, and all that sort of thing. And that actually eventually made me go back. Thank you. I turned up at my parents' house and said I've come home, and my mum was like obviously overjoyed and threw her arms around me and things. And then afterwards realised that she should probably have just phoned the leaders and said, you know, she's come home. When she did, they came and took me away to this house in Cosham on my own.
Although she returned home, Laura was shut up in what was at the time an empty Brethren house. Being shut up is based on the biblical procedure for the treatment of lepers. Laura was denied access to her family by the priests.
I think at the time I just accepted what they said. It was just really hard, and I said to them, you know, how long am I going to be here? And they said, well, until we think you're forgiven, until we feel God's forgiven you. It could be a few months, it could be a year. And at the time that was like, oh, I've got to live here, nothing to do, no one to talk to except them when they come round. It was just desperately, desperately lonely, and I think that was probably the closest I've ever been to being insane.
She actually left home on her own free will, her own choice, to go off with a man, and she returned to her father's house after 8 months of being away, and because the matter's been unclear in what has transgressed during that time, she was provided with a fully furnished bungalow which belonged to Brethren, and she was provided with what she needed to be able to live. She was provided with a telephone, she was provided with a car to get to a job which was found for her by the Brethren, and she was visited daily by persons that would take an interest in consideration for her in every way, once a day, every day. And after 5 weeks, she returned to her family as restored.
Laura endured her treatment by the priests because she didn't want to lose her family. but she eventually realized she could no longer accept the Brethren's beliefs and left again.
I've learnt to make a new life for myself and try and accept my old one and just hope that sometime in the future it's going to change and that they'll talk to me and be a part of my life whilst letting me get on with my life. Like I let them have their beliefs, I hope that they'll one day let me have mine.
June 2001. Using his electronic gadgets, the insider continues to send messages, but at a risk. If he's discovered to be communicating with worldlies, he can lose his home, his job in a Brethren business, and, like Laura, be banished from his family.
The risk is no greater having all of my electronic gadgets than if I had one of them. The discovery of even one of them would result in my being forcibly removed. The conviction that something is wrong, just because the Brethren say it is frustrating. There's no way round it. I cannot change anybody's mind and say, look, there is no sense in it, because sense doesn't come into it. Sense is not even under consideration.
Exclusive Brethren have such a fear of worldly contamination that they view divided families as an inevitable consequence of a member leaving.
I just knew I had to get out of the Brethren. I'm not sure what actually brought me to that final decision, but it was a process. It came to a point where my position in the Brethren was untenable.
4 years ago, Andy Giles lost his family, as well as his home and job, when he left the Brethren in Worthing.
I was unhappy. I disagreed with a lot of their ideas on separation from the world and isolation from the world. And I was basically living a lie. I was giving lip service to something that I was, by the day, becoming more in disagreement with.
Andy knew the price he would have to pay. Now divorced, he was cut off from his children.
Well, marriage amongst the Brethren, they have a saying where you must be married to the assembly before you marry your wife. It's an underlying understanding in every Brethren marriage that the fellowship comes first. And we were married for 11 years before I finally left, at which time we had 4 children.
Finding it impossible to leave, Andy did something that would ensure his ejection from the Brethren. He committed adultery.
It's not something I'm proud of. I'm utterly ashamed of it, really. But I was desperate to get out of the Brethren, and I went back. That was a Friday. I went back and told them what I'd done, and I was instantly, from that point on, I was cut off. I've never actually had a conversation with my wife since then, since that moment. I was terrified of taking my wife and family into the world, and the Brethren's stories being true, and having my children destroyed by the devil, basically. I actually thought it would be better for them at that point to stay in the Brethren. I actually signed a form that a deed of separation that the Brethren produced, which enabled my wife to continue going to the meetings. So I signed that, and that document actually said that I would have no access to the children.
The priests would only talk to us about Andy's case in general terms.
Every case is looked at on its own merits, as it is in every walk of life. You can't just, there's no statement, flat bang statement that says this is what happens, if that's the case. Each case is looked at on its own merits.
If he was determined to go his own way and say he was unfaithful to his wife, say he committed something like adultery, which we would regard seriously, obviously there would be a separation. Normally that would be a legal separation.
Divorcees are not allowed to remarry in the Brethren, so she will never have someone else. There'll never be a father figure in that house again. They'll be taught that I'm evil. I've gone off into the world, and the devil's got control of my heart. They will be told something like that.
In a bid to gain access to his children, Andy has a